and welcome to this episode of Live with Lizzie. I am your host, Lizzie. Joining me today is Dr. Moritz Rudolf, a research scholar in law and fellow at Yale Law School's Tsai China Center. Dr. Rudolf, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Rudolf, the new Chinese leadership lineup reviewed after the 20th Party Congress has spooked international investors quite a bit, as evident from the Chinese equity sell-off immediately following that. Was it a surprise to you?
Well, when it comes to the response from the market, I think the market, there appears to be a consensus that the Chinese leadership doesn't care that much about the market. But still, we didn't see a lot of panic selling. So it was just like a short-term response, but it was not what I would consider some kind of panic. I think it's more like there appears to be a conviction that the great time of investing in China is over, and China is becoming more of a trading market where you throw some money in, but it's not systemically as investable as it could have been, or as some would have hoped for a couple of years ago. So I think from the market perspective, for investors, the 20th Party Congress results are viewed as a way backwards, and therefore also as with the lineup that was presented in the end of being when it comes to the economic development, economic interest, and the question of having an ultra loyal standing committee. It was more to the latter, more loyalists were surrounded, and this was from at least from a lot of investors' perspectives, a big surprise.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little more about the new Chinese Premier Li Qiang, who will likely become a key lieutenant for implementing Xi Jinping's economic policy initiatives?
Yeah, well, I think for him, in particular him, this has been a big surprise, especially given the mismanagement of the COVID lockdown, the 2-month lockdown in Shanghai, where he was based before. But I think when you look a little bit closer into the relationship between Li Qiang and Xi Jinping, it is more understandable why he was promoted, because they go back for a very long time. Li Qiang, he was born in Zhejiang. He was based there for the first couple of years of his career, and he was in fact actually the party secretary of Wenzhou at a young age of, I think, 43, which is a city which has a very vibrant private sector. And his earlier policies were pretty investors or pretty private sector friendly. And for instance, he was encouraging companies to go public at a time where this was still quite unusual in China. And but then when he was promoted higher up, and he was working more closely with Xi Jinping in between 2004 and 2007, he actually served as his chief of staff in Zhejiang province. Mm-hmm. And when Xi moved on to Shanghai, he was still pretty much following his policies by the letter, and promoting a business-friendly kind of environment. And then I think from 2016, we could see him being selected of one of the people that were meant for a higher office, because he became the party chief of Jiangsu province, which is usually an indication of new steps upwards. It is the second largest economy in China, and therefore a very important position. But in his case, he only served there for 15 months, which is the shortest any Jiangsu party secretary has ever served, and who has moved up to even higher office in Shanghai. So this is something. So it's quite a career. So with the of course the COVID mismanagement, this has raised some concerns about his ability to deal with crisis. But him being picked appears to be more of a reason because of his loyalty to Xi Jinping. So this can be explained like this. And one additional factor which is interesting. So he used to, in his early career, he was quite pro-business, he had a pro-business attitude. But so you have to balance this out with his being a protege of Xi Jinping. Right. But the last aspect to that, which is quite interesting, is that his ability to actually function as premier also depends on his ability to work in the system in Beijing, and he doesn't have a lot of experience in doing that. So that actually creates another not a dilemma, but a situation where he is like more reliable on his old networks that he established with Xi decades ago.
Fascinating. And another person on the Politburo Standing Committee, Tsai, his promotion actually surprised many China watchers. What do we know about Tsai, the Beijing party chief slated to become the next leader of the Communist Party's Central Secretariat?
But he's also a very interesting character, and there's it's interesting when you look at him, because quite early on in his career, he was quite a public, outspoken person. So there's a lot of information about him, at least about his early statements and his early attitudes. So he's from Fujian province. He hasn't been dyeing his hair for a long time, which is also usually something what the elders do, but he has been doing this but while being an active politician for quite some time. He has been, he also has long ties with Xi Jinping. He's also part of the so-called Zhejiang army, and to which Li Qiang also belongs to. But when we look at his early policies, so when he was, for instance, the mayor of Hangzhou, he used to engage in grassroots engagement with the citizens, and this was also quite unusual. And in addition to that, like, he was very active on social media. He used to have over 10 million followers on Weibo, and he was communicating and with the public in a way which was viewed as quite innovative. And also, like in 2011, he was actually one of the, he said that it is a shame that Facebook was not operating in China. But then in 2012, which is like in June, which was before Xi Jinping actually became General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, he already called for a Chinese cybersecurity law focusing in using Chinese technology. So he has had a little bit of a turnaround. Well, not of a turnaround there, but it's just really interesting to see how he was pretty much focusing on engagement, which was interpreted by some Western China observers of him being a little bit more liberal, but in the end it's not, because of course he's someone who's just like jumping up the ranks within the party system, and him calling for a cybersecurity law with of course just relying on Chinese technology is an indication for that. And what was also really interesting is that pretty much since 2014 was just like rising up the ranks within the party system, and he was just like a very unusual the steps that he was able to, like the leaps that he was able to do. For instance, like he was only 9 months a Beijing mayor before he became the party secretary of Beijing, and when he became that, which all completely broke like post-cultural revolution tradition, he was not even a member or an alternate member of the CCP Central Committee to become the party secretary of Beijing, which is like a spot that's usually reserved for a Politburo member. So that is just very interesting to see how, and now he made it to a standing committee. But just another aspect, like once he was in Beijing, like of course he was also lately criticized for his like what he has done to Beijing, like to the cultural scene of Beijing, for instance, and parts of his policies in the run-up of the Olympics have also been criticized. So he was by many people just like not viewed as a really popular person, but in the end, his ties with Xi Jinping are long-lasting, and he has been like on the run to become a high-level person for at least 6 years.
I see. Fascinating. Another person that's especially interesting to our audience is Qin Gang, the current ambassador to the United States. Qin Gang was unexpectedly promoted to the Central Committee and will likely become China's next foreign minister, according to Wall Street Journal report. Does Qin Gang's promotion signal any change in the direction of China's foreign policy?
Well, I heard about the him potentially becoming a foreign minister in the summer of this year in Germany, actually, where I'm from. Mm. And so it was, I always found it quite interesting that he, being the ambassador to the United States, of him not, well, there have been reports of him not being in, like, which would be necessary, of course, given the current downward spiral in the bilateral relationship, to have an open communications channel. So I think this is now people in Washington might be asking the question that it's like now you have this person who's actually moving up and becoming such an important person, given that there's a conflict already there, but escalating. So having him as a contact point and having established a certain kind of deep relationship with him would be quite beneficial, because we do not know what's going to happen in the next couple of months and years. And having someone with a US experience, this, like in the past at least, this was quite useful and was utilized by the American side. So in this case, it is maybe it's a missed opportunity, but I think when it comes to, like, maybe from the Chinese perspective, having him promoted and elevated, this is an acknowledgement of the crucial nature of the US-China relationship, and this just becoming more relevant and important. So having him potentially the next foreign minister is just is a logical consequence of that.
Fascinating. So that's super helpful. But in general, what should we expect during Xi Jinping's third term, in terms of big picture items?
Yeah. Well, I think it's still, of course, quite early to predict, but my personal reading is that we would likely see a continuation of, like, the big report, I think, was in 2017. Mm-hmm. So this providing a direction, like reinterpreting the principal contradiction. This was the major change in the focus of the CCP. So I think what we see now with a standing committee with the loyalists, all those long-term visions that have been formulated, like 2049, 2035, 2027. So those are long-term abstract visions, and we have implementation plans that have been like formulated, but they're still quite abstract. So I think we're just like gonna see the policies that were outlined in 2017 just being that would be the focus on that, unless there is some kind of external or internal obstacles emerging, like a conflict with the United States, or with the economy becoming calling for more reform, because it's just the economy cooling down more, and so that would trigger some kind of necessity to a policy course. But generally, I think it's more of we'll see more of the implementation of policies that and visions that were announced already in the past.
If you enjoy our discussions here, I'm sure you would find value in our new powerful marketplace tool for investors, also called China Edge. It tracks, distills, and analyzes both Chinese language and English language materials about Chinese companies, business leaders, and government entities, and reviews the often hidden links between them. For our YouTube viewers, we are offering a limited time 50% discount. Just go to the link you see on the screen and use the code EDGE50. Also, sign up for the China Edge newsletter. It's a daily 2-minute rundown of China business news you don't want to miss. The link is right here on the screen. You can also click on the link in the video's description section to get your complimentary subscription today.